Words shape power, and power shapes destiny. The way leaders speak decides whether people follow or turn away. Every great leader throughout history mastered the art of communication, not by chance, but by discipline. Welcome to Audiobook Every Day, where each chapter unlocks timeless lessons you can use daily to rise above hesitation, speak with impact, and lead with authority. This is not just another audiobook, it is a blueprint to transform the way you talk, command respect, and inspire action. Stay with us, subscribe, and discover how your voice can become the tool that changes everything. Chapter 1. Master the power of confident, clear-spoken words. Words change what is possible. When a sentence is chosen with care, a room shifts, a team aligns, and doubt gives way to action. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That truth sits at the heart of every leader's voice. Mastery of speech begins with mastery of self. Speaking like a leader is not an act of theatrics or a mask. It is the practiced habit of making meaning clear, of moving people by clarity rather than noise, and of owning the space between thought and expression with calm discipline. Begin by noticing the physical reality of speaking. The throat feels small when nerves rise, the mouth may dry, heartbeat picks up, and words rush like a backed-up river. These sensations are not enemies, they are signals. The first practical step is breath. 3 slow, full breaths before opening the mouth. Breathe into the belly, count to 4 on the inhale, hold for 1, exhale for 6. This simple reset lowers the voice by grounding the diaphragm and slows the mind so words can be shaped rather than spilled. Discipline the breath daily for 5 minutes, and the body learns that voice is not a reflex, but a tool under command. The second foundational truth is clarity over complexity. The Pareto principle applies to speech as well. Roughly 20% of what is said creates 80% of the impact. Identify the essential idea before speaking and state it plainly in one sentence. If it must be longer, make every sentence serve that core idea. Remove clauses that only fluff the statement. Replace weak verbs with strong verbs. Swap "I think we could possibly consider" for "I recommend we." This is not about being blunt for its own sake. It is about honoring people's time and attention with crisp direction. Voice is a physical instrument. Daily, practice 3 vocal exercises for 5 minutes each. 1. Humming low to feel vibration in the chest. 2. Reading a paragraph aloud while deliberately slowing to half the normal pace and emphasizing strong nouns and verbs. 3. Tongue twisters to improve articulation. These exercises build resonance, control, and diction. Record 1 short passage every other day and listen back. The recording reveals patterns that live performance hides: a habitual upward inflection, a clipped ending, or a tendency to swallow consonants. Adjust and repeat. Progress is the accumulation of small corrections. Words must be allied with structure. A fast, practical structure that works in many settings is this 3-part arc: intention, evidence, action. State the intention, 1 clear sentence. Offer 1-2 pieces of evidence or reasoning that matter. End with the action requested or the decision required. For example, the intention is to reduce customer waiting time by 20%. Data shows priorities in the queue system cause 2-minute delays per transaction. Reassign 1 team member to the queue at peak hours for 2 weeks and measure results. This structure creates quick comprehension and invites immediate testing. Silence is as powerful as speech. Pauses are the punctuation of leadership. Use a 2-second pause after a key sentence. A room leans into stillness and meaning deepens. The pause is also a self-check. It prevents automatic filler words that betray uncertainty. Replace and like with a breath held for half a beat. A practical drill during conversations. Count silently to 2 before responding. The habit will feel awkward at first, then strategic. People interpret brief silence as thoughtful presence, not as emptiness. Confidence is not volume, it is steadiness. The law of preparedness. Prepare more than the audience expects. Trumps loudness every time. Before any important talk, prepare 3 anchors. A 20-second opening line, a 90-second core explanation, and a 20-second close that contains a clear next step. Rehearse until these anchors can be delivered without reading. In meetings, open with the 20-second line and close with the 20-second ask. Consistency breeds trust. Repetition of clear anchors makes complex proposals feel manageable. Choose language that builds agency. Replace passive constructions with active ones. Instead of mistakes were made, say the team missed the deadline. Ownership creates accountability and creates forward motion. Avoid qualifiers that erode decision-making power. Maybe, possibly, I think. Stoic teaching encourages accepting what is within control. Words that assign responsibility invite action. Words that soften blame invite drift. Story is the vehicle that carries data into memory. Humans remember scenes more than statistics. Use a brief anecdote to anchor abstract points. 1 sentence of context, 1 line of consequence, 1 line of transformation. For instance, a team at a small startup missed a launch because the testing process had no owner. Reassigning responsibility to 1 person cut turnaround time in half. This converts a procedural fix into a lived consequence and models a solution. Stories must be concise. Think of them as proof that clarifies rather than distracts. Practical application requires routines that map to daily life. Implement a micro-practice plan. 1. Morning anchor. Spend 2 minutes each morning stating a 1-sentence mission for the day aloud. The voice reinforces commitment and primes choices. 2. Midday checkpoint. Take 3 deep breaths before the next big conversation and restate the day's mission in 1 sentence. 3. End-of-day review. Jot down 3 phrases that landed well and 1 filler habit to eliminate tomorrow. Small repetition compounds into reliable presence. Conversations that matter need questions, not monologues. Ask focused questions that direct thought. What is the simplest outcome that would make this meeting worthwhile? Which one change will move the needle most? Good questions reveal priorities and create ownership. A practical habit. Begin meetings with 1 clarifying question and end with 1 decisive question that asks for next steps and names who will do them. Difficult conversations demand a calm, stoic center. Before speaking, run a private frame. Name the emotion, set the principle that will guide the exchange, and decide the desired outcome. For example, name the emotion frustration, identify the principle respectful accountability, and outline the desired outcome, clear corrective steps, and a timeline. Speak with facts, avoid moralizing language, and tether criticism to future behavior. Use the formula observation, impact, request. When reports arrive late, observation, deadlines slip and clients lose trust, impact, commit to a same-day update or escalate to me, request. This keeps the exchange actionable and avoids the trap of blame. Every leader's speech benefits from a power phrase, a clear, polished sentence that signals authority and generosity. Prepare 3 power phrases for different situations. Clarifying, redirecting, and closing. For example, clarifying, the most important measure is client retention. Redirecting, Focus on the solution instead of the problem. Closing, confirming next steps. A will do X. B will do Y by Friday. Use them sparingly. Repetition builds recognition and trust. Feedback is the mirror of progress. Seek specific feedback from people who will be candid. Ask teammates 2 direct questions. What wording did I use that felt unclear? And when did my tone feel most present? Use answers to refine anchors and to strip away habitual fillers. Reward candid feedback with gratitude and with action. Demonstrate change and the team will become invested in your growth. A final practical device is the weekly public rehearsal. Choose a short, real venue, 5 minutes at the team meeting, a comment in a client email, a 2-minute video clip, and practice one small improvement each week. Rotate focus. Week 1, pace. Week 2, fewer qualifiers. Week 3, stronger verbs. The public context creates accountability and speeds change. Over months, these small disciplined adjustments accumulate into a voice that others trust as much as they respect. The discipline of speaking like a leader is a daily craft. It asks for patience, repetition, and the willingness to endure awkwardness in service of clarity. The Stoic reminds that obstacles are practice, each pause practiced, every plain sentence chosen, and every small rehearsal is an exercise in mastery. Sun Tzu's wisdom is relevant here. Victorious warriors win first and then go to war. Prepare the words. Mastery in private produces authority in public. If this chapter resonates, consider subscribing for more practical scripts and step-by-step habits designed to grow presence and influence. Speak with intention tomorrow. Breathe, state the single sentence that matters, and act on it. That simple loop. Prepare, speak, measure, creates leaders who do not merely occupy time but who shape what happens next. Chapter 2. Develop an authoritative voice without sounding overbearing. Authority in the voice is not measured by how loud someone speaks, nor by how forceful their words sound. True authority comes from balance, steady tone, grounded presence, and the discipline to speak with weight, without pushing people away. Leaders who master this art carry influence because their words land with conviction, while still leaving room for others to feel respected and heard. Cicero once wrote, "Brevity is a great charm of eloquence." The same principle applies to authority. When the voice is precise and unforced, people lean in, not out. The mistake many people make is equating authority with domination. They raise their volume, cut others off, or rely on sharp tones, thinking these behaviors will make them appear powerful. Instead, it creates distance and even resentment. The voice of a leader does not bulldoze, it guides. The challenge is to project strength without aggression, firmness without arrogance, and confidence without ego. Achieving this begins with developing vocal control and aligning tone with intention. Imagine walking into a room where a manager starts a meeting by shouting instructions. The room goes quiet, but the silence is heavy, filled with tension. Now picture another manager who enters, greets the team calmly, and states, "We have a challenge to solve today, and I know this group has the ability to handle it." The second voice carries more impact because it communicates assurance without intimidation. Authority is not in raising volume, but in raising trust. To cultivate this voice, the first practical exercise is what ancient Stoics would call the discipline of harmony. Practice reading aloud in a lower register than usual, not artificially deep, but grounded in the chest rather than the throat. Record yourself reading a page of a book, then play it back and notice where your tone wavers or becomes sharp. The aim is to smooth the edges, to carry calm strength rather than nervous energy. Practice this daily for 10 minutes, and over time, the voice develops a presence that naturally commands attention. Equally important is pacing. A hurried voice communicates anxiety. A steady pace communicates confidence. Try this practice. When making a key statement, slow down by 1/3 of your natural speed. After a strong point, insert a small pause, long enough to allow the words to sink in. A pause is not empty. Silence, it is space that gives weight to what was said. In conversation, pausing signals self-control. It tells others that the speaker is not rushing to fill silence, but is comfortable allowing the message to resonate. Consider the example of Nelson Mandela. Even when addressing hostile crowds or political opponents, his voice carried calm authority. He did not bark orders or raise his tone to match anger. Instead, his deliberate pace and even tone conveyed the message. He was in control of himself, and therefore others trusted his leadership. Authority without overbearing presence is not about overpowering others. It is about demonstrating mastery over one's own emotions and delivery. A second practical step is word choice. An authoritative voice avoids exaggeration, gossip, and vague claims. It favors grounded statements that are verifiable and direct. For instance, instead of saying, "Everyone always complains about this process," a leader says, "3 people raised concerns about this process last week." Precision makes words believable, and believability is the backbone of authority. When people know the speaker chooses words carefully, they listen more closely because they trust the message is reliable. In everyday life, practice this by reviewing your own phrases. Replace vague fillers like "a lot," "maybe," or "kind of" with specific details. Swap "I feel like this" might work with "this approach reduces the timeline by 2 days." Over time, these refinements make the voice sharper without ever sounding oppressive. People respect language that is clear, measured, and purposeful. Real authority also comes from listening. A voice that constantly dominates the airwaves quickly feels overbearing. A leader builds authority by speaking less and listening more. The paradox is that the less someone feels the need to prove authority, the more authority they project. A practical habit is to summarize what someone else has said before responding. For example, "What I hear is that you're concerned about the deadline. That's important, and here's how we can address it." This not only confirms understanding, but shows respect, which makes others more willing to accept guidance. A real-life scenario illustrates this clearly. Picture a project manager facing a team frustrated about workload. One leader might cut them off and insist, "We don't have time for complaints. Just focus on the job." Another leader could respond with, "I hear the pressure you're feeling. Here are the 3 priorities that matter most right now." The second approach does not soften the reality. It still sets direction, but it frames authority through recognition instead of dismissal. The team leaves feeling guided rather than crushed. Tone matters as much as words. A simple exercise to practice is the neutral tone drill. Take one sentence such as, "We need to complete this by Friday," and deliver it in 3 ways. Once with anger, once with indifference, and once with calm firmness. Record and replay them. Notice how the calm firmness feels both clear and respectful. The goal is to train the ear to recognize when emotion hijacks tone and to replace it with steady authority. Discipline plays a central role here. Stoic philosophy teaches that true mastery begins with self-control. If a leader cannot manage their own impatience, their voice will betray it in sharpness, sarcasm, or rushed delivery. Authority emerges not from force, but from restraint. The most commanding leaders often speak less, but every word counts. They discipline themselves to avoid emotional outbursts, knowing that the tone of their voice can either build bridges or burn them. Practical self-mastery can be built with one daily ritual. During the first conversation of the day, consciously lower your volume by 10% and slow your speech slightly. Notice how the other person responds. Most will unconsciously match the steadiness, and the exchange will feel more grounded. Repeat this each day until it becomes a natural habit. Over time, this small adjustment rewires the perception others have of your presence. An example from business illustrates this well. A young executive once struggled in board meetings because her voice would rise when challenged. She worked on lowering her pitch slightly, cutting filler words, and pausing before responding. Within months, colleagues noted a shift. She sounded calmer, more in control, and her proposals were taken more seriously. She did not change her ideas, only her delivery. The authority came from discipline, not dominance. The final piece of developing an authoritative voice without being overbearing is intention. Authority is not a performance, it is service. When the intention is to control, the voice becomes heavy-handed. When the intention is to guide, the voice becomes inspiring. Before speaking, ask one internal question. Am I speaking to elevate myself or to elevate others? That answer shapes tone instantly. An audience, whether in a boardroom, classroom, or online, feels the difference. A voice that aims to serve creates connection. A voice that aims to dominate creates resistance. As Epictetus said, first learn the meaning of what you say, and then speak. Authority arises when words are chosen with meaning and delivered with discipline. Developing an authoritative voice is a journey, not a switch. It begins with grounding the breath, lowering the register, choosing precise words, and disciplining tone. It grows through practice, feedback, and daily rituals that reinforce steadiness, and it flourishes when guided by the intention to serve rather than control. Speak today not to overwhelm, but to guide. Speak not to silence others, but to invite clarity. Authority built on respect lasts longer than authority built on fear. The world has enough noise. What it needs are leaders whose voices carry calm strength, firm, clear, and human. Chapter 3. Use strategic pauses to command respect and attention. There is a hidden strength in silence that most people never learn to use. Many rush through conversations as if speed were proof of confidence, yet the opposite is true. A leader knows that words carry more power when they are given space to breathe. The pause between sentences, the stillness after a powerful statement, is where respect is earned and attention is secured. Great leaders understand that silence is not emptiness. It is gravity. It draws people closer, makes them lean in, and signals that what has been spoken deserves to be considered. Think about the last time you listened to someone who spoke too quickly. Their words may have been intelligent, but the message felt rushed, even forgettable. Now recall someone who spoke with calm certainty, who paused deliberately as if to underline the weight of their ideas. Which voice stayed with you? Which person commanded your attention without effort? That is the difference a pause makes. It transforms speech into presence. One of the wisest observations about speech comes from the philosopher Publius Cyrus. Speech is the mirror of the soul. As a man speaks, so is he. The pause reflects discipline. It shows that the speaker is not desperate to fill silence, not afraid of stillness, but fully in control of the moment. People respect that control, and they naturally give authority to the one who wields it. The practice of pausing begins with awareness. Most people are unaware of how quickly they speak or how often they use fillers like to avoid silence. A powerful exercise is to record a short explanation of a topic, perhaps describing your day or summarizing a news article. Play it back and count how many times your words run together without space, or how often nervous fillers creep in. Awareness is the first step toward mastery. Once you hear your patterns, Train yourself to insert pauses at 3 critical points. After asking a question, after delivering an important statement, and before revealing a key idea. For example, if you ask a colleague, "What do you believe is the best course of action?" then pause for 3 full seconds. The silence communicates that their answer matters, that you are giving space for thought. After stating something decisive, like "This direction will change the outcome of our project," stop for 2 beats before continuing. The pause amplifies importance, and just before revealing an answer or new idea, pause briefly. The silence creates anticipation, much like a drum roll before a reveal. A real-world example makes this clear. Consider courtroom lawyers. The most compelling trial attorneys do not simply rattle off evidence at high speed. They use silence as a weapon. When delivering closing arguments, they pause after damning evidence, letting the jury sit with the weight of the words. The silence makes the point sink deeper than constant talking ever could. They know that silence is not absence. It is emphasis. Another example comes from the world of leadership communication. Martin Luther King Jr.'s "I Have a Dream" speech is remembered not only for the beauty of the words, but for the spaces between them. His pauses allowed the crowd to respond, to breathe in the vision he was painting. If he had rushed through, the speech would not have echoed across history. The pause gave each phrase the dignity it deserved. The challenge for most people is overcoming discomfort with silence. In everyday conversation, silence feels like a gap that needs to be filled. But to a leader, silence is not a gap, it is strategy. A practical way to build comfort with silence is through a drill known as the 5-second hold. During your next conversation, deliver a sentence, then count silently to 5 before continuing. It will feel long at first, almost unbearable, but it trains you to become comfortable in moments where others would rush. Over time, this discomfort fades, and the pause becomes a natural tool. Another simple practice is to read a short passage aloud and deliberately pause for 2 seconds at every comma and 3 seconds at every period. This trains rhythm and allows your voice to settle into a cadence that feels strong and intentional. Practicing daily for just 5 minutes reshapes how your voice flows in conversation. Instead of rushing, you develop a tempo that commands attention without demanding it. The power of the pause also extends to conflict. In heated discussions, people often raise their voices and talk over one another. A leader who pauses instead of reacting immediately shifts the entire atmosphere. Imagine a team member angrily questioning a decision. A quick, defensive reply might escalate the tension. But a pause, holding silence for just a breath longer than expected, signals composure. It calms the room, disarms the aggression, and creates space for a measured response. This is not weakness, it is strength under control. Psychology supports this. Studies in communication show that people interpret measured pacing and deliberate pauses as signs of confidence and credibility. Fast, non-stop talking is often read as nervousness, while steady rhythm suggests authority. The human brain also retains information better when given short breaks. The pause is not just performance, it helps listeners remember what was said. Respect is not something that can be demanded, it is something that must be cultivated. The pause cultivates it. When a leader pauses, they demonstrate self-discipline, patience, and respect for the listener. They prove that the conversation is not about dominating space, but about creating shared understanding. This is why people instinctively trust leaders who know how to slow down. Here is one practical method you can apply immediately. Before every important meeting or presentation, write down your 3 most important points. As you practice speaking them aloud, mark a pause after each one. For example, the strategy has 3 pillars. Pause. First, we need to improve customer experience. Pause. Second, we must reduce delivery times. Third, we will expand into new markets. This simple structure turns a list into a sequence of impactful statements. In daily conversations, experiment with silence in unexpected places. For example, when telling a story, stop briefly just before the climax. If you are describing a challenge you faced, pause before revealing the outcome. The silence will pull your listener in, make them anticipate the next words, and heighten their focus. It is the same principle filmmakers use with suspense. The moment just before the reveal is what makes the reveal powerful. A real-life story illustrates this well. A young entrepreneur was pitching investors and noticed he had a habit of rushing through his slides. His mentor advised him to pause for 3 seconds after every major figure he presented. At first it felt unnatural, but during his next pitch he tried it. When he said, "Our revenue grew by 42% last quarter," and then paused, the investors looked up from their notes and locked eyes with him. The silence forced them to process the number. The pitch was a success, not because the data changed, but because the delivery gave the data weight. The pause is also a test of discipline. It forces the speaker to resist the urge to fill space with empty words. In this way, it is a form of self-mastery. Seneca once wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." The same is true with silence. The fear of an awkward pause is far worse than the pause itself. Once you train yourself to be at peace with it, silence becomes a tool that others admire. As you practice this skill, remember that the goal is not to manipulate, but to respect. The pause is not for show. It is for clarity. It gives weight to your words, shows composure in your presence, and creates space for others to think. Over time, this habit reshapes how people see you. They begin to associate your voice with steadiness, your words with importance, and your presence with authority. A leader who knows how to use silence wisely does not just speak. They resonate. Every pause becomes a reminder that they are not chasing approval or racing against time. They are standing firm, guiding others with calm strength. The pause is not weakness. It is the signature of someone who knows the value of their voice. And when that silence arrives, respect follows, and attention is no longer demanded. It is given freely. Chapter 4. Speak with purpose. Eliminate filler and weak language. Words are tools of influence, but many people dull those tools with weak expressions, empty fillers, and vague phrases that drain the strength from their message. Leaders are not remembered for the noise they make, they are remembered for the clarity they bring. A single sharp sentence can move a room, while a flood of soft words barely stirs attention. Speaking with purpose means stripping away what weakens a message and choosing language that carries weight. It is discipline in expression, the art of cutting straight to meaning without hiding behind unnecessary words. Filler words are the small leaks that sink the ship of communication. They sneak into speech without notice. Basically these words create the impression of uncertainty and dilute authority. People often use them as bridges, while their minds catch up with their mouths. The problem is that listeners hear hesitation instead of confidence. Over time, repeated fillers erode trust. An audience may not consciously count them, but they feel them and they walk away with less conviction in the speaker's message. Weak language shows up in phrases that soften impact. "I think this might be a good idea," or "maybe we could try this." Compare that to "this is the idea that will work," or "the best option is this." The second form feels confident and purposeful, while the first sounds unsure. The difference lies not in arrogance but in ownership. When a leader takes responsibility for their words, others follow. Consider Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. It was less than 3 minutes long and under 300 words, yet it still echoes through history. There were no fillers, no wasted language, no hedging. Every word served purpose. That is the power of clarity. It allows the message to live long after the moment has passed. One practical exercise to eliminate fillers is the silent pause substitution. Whenever you feel the urge to say or like, replace it with silence. At first, the silence will feel uncomfortable, but over time it becomes a habit that conveys composure instead of hesitation. Record a 1-minute talk on any subject and count the number of fillers. Then repeat the same talk, consciously pausing instead of using fillers. Review both versions and notice how much stronger the second sounds. With daily practice, this technique transforms speech from scattered to sharp. A real-life example shows the difference. A young professional named Sarah was preparing for her first big presentation at work. She was knowledgeable, but nervousness caused her to fill every gap with "you know" and "sort of." Her manager coached her to record herself and mark every filler on paper. The first recording had nearly 40 in 10 minutes. Through weeks of practice with silent pauses, she cut that number down to just 3. When she finally gave her presentation, her colleagues noticed the change. She sounded confident, clear, and decisive. The content was the same, but the delivery made her words feel trustworthy. Weak language is often rooted in fear. Fear of being wrong, fear of offending, fear of standing out. Leaders cannot afford that fear. Speaking with purpose requires courage to state what you believe in plain terms. Instead of "I could be wrong, but maybe we should adjust the schedule," try "the schedule needs adjusting to meet the deadline." This does not mean refusing feedback or ignoring others. It means starting from a position of clarity, then allowing space for discussion. A firm statement invites dialogue more effectively than a hesitant one. Purposeful language also means being concise. Leaders who ramble lose their audience. Listeners crave direction, not detours. The Stoic philosopher Seneca once said, "When words are many, they are rarely meaningful." Brevity does not mean saying less. It means saying only what matters. A leader must learn to edit themselves in real time, asking, "Does this word serve my point, or does it weaken it?" Here is a powerful practice. Before any important meeting, write down the 3 key points you need to express. Then reduce each one into a single sentence of 10 words or fewer. During the meeting, deliver those sentences exactly as written, then expand only if necessary. This habit ensures that even if discussion wanders, your main message lands with clarity. Over time, people begin to associate your voice with direction and purpose. Another example comes from the world of sports. A basketball coach preparing a team for the final game could choose to overwhelm players with a long speech filled with details and nervous energy, or he could say, "Focus on defense, protect the ball, trust each other." 3 simple, strong sentences can drive more focus than a 20-minute lecture. The team remembers the message because it was clear and purposeful. Weak words also appear in apologies and negotiations. Phrases like, "I'm sorry if you felt that way," or "maybe we could consider lowering the price a little," sound evasive. Purposeful language in the same situations would be, "I take responsibility for what happened, and here is how I will correct it," or "the fair price for this work is X." Notice that clarity does not shut the door, it opens it with strength. People respect those who speak plainly, even in uncomfortable moments. The discipline to remove weak language requires awareness of habits. Start by noticing which words you rely on when nervous. Do you often say "kind of," "maybe," or "a little"? Write them down and challenge yourself to cut them from conversations for 1 week. Each time you catch yourself about to say one, stop and replace it with a stronger alternative or a pause. This self-monitoring trains the brain to favor precision. Purposeful speech also requires energy and delivery. A sentence that is technically clear can still sound lifeless if spoken with a flat tone. Authority grows when words are infused with conviction. Try practicing by reading motivational quotes aloud, focusing on putting energy behind each phrase. For example, read Marcus Aurelius' line, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this and you will find strength. Speak it as if you believe it, with full voice and steady rhythm. Notice how it feels different from saying it flatly. Purpose is not only in word choice, but in the life you give those words. An entrepreneur once told the story of how he lost his first round of investors because his pitch was filled with weak phrases like, "I think this could work," and "maybe this is a good time to try." Investors sensed his uncertainty. Months later, after coaching, he returned with sharper language. "This product solves a real problem. The market is ready. Our strategy is clear." The numbers had not changed, but the language carried weight. This time he secured the funding. His transformation proved that authority lives in words as much as in ideas. Speaking with purpose is not about perfection, it is about intention. Each word should serve meaning, not fill space. When people hear a leader speak without clutter, they listen more carefully. When they hear strong words instead of vague ones, they feel guided rather than confused. The result is respect, trust, and influence. Clarity creates momentum. Purposeful language inspires action. Filler and weak words, on the other hand, stall progress and drain energy. The discipline to cut them is not just about sounding polished, it is about embodying leadership in every sentence. Every conversation becomes an opportunity to build credibility, to shape perception, and to move people forward. Speak today with words that carry strength. Replace hesitation with clarity, filler with silence, and vagueness with precision. The world does not remember those who talk endlessly, it remembers those who speak with purpose. When each word matters, each word leaves a mark. That is how leaders talk. And that is how leaders are heard. Chapter 5. Adapt your message to different audiences and situations. Leadership is not about delivering the same message in the same way every time. It is about reading the room, knowing the people, and shaping your words so that they land with the greatest impact. A wise leader understands that the truth may stay the same, but the way it is communicated must adapt to the audience and the situation. What motivates a boardroom of executives will not move a team of frontline workers. What inspires a group of students may not persuade seasoned professionals. The ability to adapt communication is the difference between being heard and being ignored. A leader who insists on speaking in only one style is like a musician who plays just one note over and over. It may be technically correct, but it fails to create harmony. Communication must be flexible without losing authenticity. This does not mean pretending to be someone else. It means adjusting tone, language, and structure so that the listener receives the message in a way that resonates with them. Stoic wisdom reminds us to focus on what we can control. You cannot control how others think, but you can control how you deliver your words to meet them where they are. Think about Winston Churchill during World War II. His speeches to Parliament were filled with detail, strategy, and reasoned argument. His speeches to the general public, however, carried short, powerful lines like "We shall never surrender." Same leader, same core message, but adapted to different audiences. He knew that while Parliament needed logic, the people needed courage, that adaptability cemented his role as a voice of strength in crisis. The practice of adapting begins with listening and observation. Before speaking, ask yourself, Who is my audience? What do they care about? What language will they respond to? What outcome do I want from this interaction? These questions act as a compass. For example, if you are addressing technical experts, precision and data matter. If you are addressing a creative team, stories and imagery may carry more weight. If you are speaking to a group under stress, brevity and reassurance matter most. A simple exercise can sharpen this skill. Take one single idea, for instance, the importance of teamwork, and practice expressing it 3 different ways to a group of children, to a team of scientists, and to a panel of investors. To children, you might say, when everyone helps each other, we win faster, like in a game. To scientists, collaborative experiments reduce error margins and speed up discovery. To investors, strong teamwork improves efficiency and lowers operational risk. The idea stays the same, but the delivery changes to match the audience. This exercise builds flexibility and prepares you for real-world conversations. Real life proves how critical this skill is. A young manager once gave a presentation to company executives using casual phrases and jokes that worked well with his team. The result was silence and raised eyebrows. Later, he adjusted his delivery, clearer data, formal tone and structured points, and the executives listened with respect. He learned that what inspires camaraderie in one setting may feel careless in another. Adapting the message didn't mean abandoning his personality, it meant respecting the expectations of his audience. Situations also shape how a message should be delivered. In moments of crisis, long speeches are ineffective. People need direction, not decoration. A leader in a factory accident, for example, should not ramble about company values. They must say, "Here is what happened. Here is what we are doing. Here is how you can stay safe." Clarity and urgency carry authority in emergencies. On the other hand, in moments of celebration, the same leader can expand, telling stories, offering gratitude, and inspiring pride. Each situation calls for a different rhythm and tone. The adaptability of speech is also vital across cultures. Words that sound inspiring in one language may sound flat or even offensive when translated. A global leader must be sensitive to cultural nuance, local traditions, and preferred styles of communication. In some cultures, directness is valued. In others, indirect language shows respect. Failing to adapt here can create distance. The most effective leaders take time to learn these differences and adjust accordingly, proving respect for the people they address. A powerful example is the way Steve Jobs presented his ideas. When addressing the public, he used simple words, visuals, and dramatic pauses. One more thing. When speaking internally to his team, he demanded precision, details, and problem-solving. He was the same person, but his delivery adapted, depending on the situation. His ability to switch styles without losing authenticity magnified his influence. One daily practice can help you grow in this area. After every significant conversation or meeting, ask yourself, did my message land the way I intended? If not, how could I have shaped it differently for this audience? Write down the answer. Over time, you will see patterns, moments where you were too formal with a relaxed group or too casual with a serious one. These reflections train your awareness and sharpen your flexibility. Respect is the foundation of adaptability. When you adapt your message, you show that you care enough about your audience to meet them where they are. This builds trust. People feel valued when they hear words delivered in a way that speaks to their world. A doctor explaining treatment to a patient does not use the same vocabulary they would in a conference of specialists. The intention is the same, to heal, but the communication shifts to serve the listener. That service is leadership. There is also great power in adjusting not just the words, but the energy. Sometimes an audience needs passion. Sometimes they need calm. Sometimes they need encouragement. Sometimes they need challenge. A leader's voice is like a dial, adjusting volume and tone to what the moment requires. The art is to be present enough to know what the moment calls for. This presence comes from observation and humility, from being more concerned with the listener's understanding than with one's own performance. The story from history brings this alive. During the American Civil Rights Movement, leaders had to adapt their messages constantly. In church gatherings, the tone was spiritual and uplifting. In meetings with lawmakers, the tone was logical and legal. At marches, the tone was urgent and collective. The core truth, justice and equality, remained steady, but the message was reshaped for each audience. This adaptability created momentum across different groups and amplified the movement's power. The greatest danger for a leader is clinging to one style and assuming it works everywhere. Rigidity leads to misunderstanding, and misunderstanding leads to failure. Adaptability is not weakness, it is wisdom. It means knowing that leadership is not about how much you say, but how much others understand and act upon. When you speak today, pay attention to who is listening. Shape your message to fit their world, not just yours. Use words that connect to their experiences, structure that matches their needs, and tone that aligns with the situation. Be flexible without losing your essence, adaptable without becoming artificial. The result is communication that not only informs, but transforms. A leader's voice is not meant to echo in emptiness. It is meant to reach people where they are and move them forward. That is why adapting your message is not just a skill, it is a duty. It proves respect, it creates clarity, and it builds bridges that last. The same truth, spoken in the right way, can change a team, inspire a community, and shape the future. Adaptability in speech is not about changing who you are. It is about ensuring your message matters to those who hear it. Chapter 6. Tell persuasive stories that inspire trust and action. Human beings are wired for stories. Long before textbooks, slideshows, and training manuals existed, people sat around fires and passed wisdom from generation to generation through tales that carried lessons. Stories have always been the most powerful tool for teaching, persuading, and uniting. A leader who learns to tell persuasive stories is not simply entertaining an audience, but planting seeds of trust, courage, and commitment that can grow into action. Facts may inform the mind, but stories move the heart, and the heart is what drives people to act. The most persuasive stories are not complex or filled with unnecessary detail. They are clear, relatable, and purposeful. They do not exist for entertainment alone, but to create transformation. A leader uses a story to illustrate why a vision matters, to show what perseverance looks like, to prove that change is possible, or to remind people of values that cannot be compromised. The story becomes a mirror in which listeners see themselves, their struggles, and their potential. That connection builds trust, because people recognize authenticity. When a leader shares a story, they are saying, "I understand where you are, and I want to show you what's possible." Consider the story of Nelson Mandela. After spending 27 years in prison, he emerged without bitterness and chose reconciliation over revenge. His words carried power not because of clever phrases, but because his life was itself a story of resilience and forgiveness. When he spoke of unity, people believed him because his personal story embodied that very principle. His narrative moved people to action and created a bridge between communities divided by decades of hatred. His authority did not come from abstract theory, but from lived experience shaped into a story. One powerful practice for any leader is to collect personal moments and shape them into short, meaningful narratives. It could be a challenge you overcame, a mistake that taught you humility, or a moment when someone believed in you and changed your direction. These stories reveal humanity. They show vulnerability without weakness and strength without arrogance. When told well, they draw listeners closer, because people trust those who are willing to be real. A leader who hides behind polished speeches without stories often feels distant. A leader who shares stories feels human and relatable. A real-life example comes from the business world. A young entrepreneur once pitched his startup idea to investors. His presentation was filled with charts, statistics, and market projections. While accurate, the room felt unmoved. Then he paused and shared a personal story about how his product was born from his grandmother's struggle with managing her medication. He described watching her confusion, the mistakes she made, and how his idea came from wanting to protect her health. Suddenly the room shifted, investors leaned in, and some even nodded with understanding. By connecting the idea to a story, he turned data into meaning, and that meaning inspired action. The Stoic philosophers taught that words should not be wasted. They must be directed toward what serves others and aligns with truth. Stories serve this principle perfectly when chosen wisely. They allow you to teach discipline, courage, and resilience in a way that instructions alone cannot achieve. For example, telling someone, "Never give up," may sound like empty advice, but sharing the story of a soldier who endured impossible odds, or an artist who faced years of rejection before success, paints the principle in vivid color. The listener remembers the story long after the words fade, and that memory shapes their actions. A simple exercise can strengthen your storytelling. Take a principle you want to teach, such as perseverance, and write down 3 short stories that illustrate it. One can be personal, one from history, and one from observation. Practice telling each story in under 2 minutes, focusing on the emotional heartbeat rather than excessive detail. The goal is not to impress, but to inspire. Over time, you will build a library of stories that you can draw from whenever you need to encourage, persuade, or guide. Great leaders also understand the rhythm of storytelling. They use tension and release, moments of silence and vivid imagery to hold attention. Think of Martin Luther King Jr.'s "I Have a Dream" speech. He painted pictures with words, children of different races playing together, justice rolling down like waters. These images became a collective story that carried people beyond the moment. His words were not just statements, they were visions shaped into a narrative of hope and determination. That story continues to inspire decades later because it was bigger than himself. Stories also create shared identity. In organizations, leaders who consistently tell stories about the company's founding struggles, customer successes, or employee breakthroughs build a sense of belonging. People do not simply show up for a paycheck, they show up to be part of a narrative larger than themselves. When employees can tell those stories themselves, culture deepens and loyalty strengthens. This principle applies not only in business, but in families, communities, and nations. Shared stories are the glue of unity. Another real-world example is the way John F. Kennedy spoke during the space race. When he declared that America would go to the moon, he did not overwhelm the public with technical details of rocket science. Instead, he told the story of human ambition and progress. We choose to go to the moon not because it is easy, but because it is hard. That story gave people pride, purpose, and a sense of destiny. Scientists were motivated not only by budgets, but by the narrative of pushing humanity forward. One practice you can apply immediately is to notice everyday events and ask, what story is hidden here that could teach others? Maybe it is watching a child fall and stand up again, or noticing a colleague go the extra mile for a customer. Write down these observations. They may seem small, but when told with care, they can hold deep power. Over time, you will build a habit of finding lessons in ordinary life, which makes you a constant source of inspiration to those around you. The most effective stories are not about the leader, but about the listener. They are told in a way that allows people to place themselves within the narrative. A story becomes persuasive when the audience sees their own struggle reflected, their own hopes illuminated, their own fears acknowledged. It is not about proving the greatness of the speaker, but about unlocking the greatness of those who hear it. This requires humility and focus, qualities that align perfectly with Stoic discipline. Trust grows when stories are consistent with actions. If a leader tells stories of honesty but acts deceitfully, trust collapses. But if stories and behavior align, people feel secure. They know that the leader's words are not just performance, but reflection of character. Persuasive stories without integrity are manipulation. Persuasive stories with integrity are transformation. The difference lies in the life behind the words. In today's noisy world, attention is scarce. Facts compete with headlines, data competes with distractions, but stories cut through the noise. They grab the ear, stir the heart, and remain in memory. A leader who masters the art of storytelling holds a rare power, the power to create trust quickly and inspire action that lasts. As you grow in this practice, remember that every person you meet is carrying their own untold story. When you share yours with honesty, you invite them to share theirs. That exchange deepens connection, and connection creates influence. The greatest leaders do not just tell stories, they create environments where stories are valued, remembered, and lived. The words of Plato still ring true. Those who tell the stories rule society, rule not by force or fear, but by shaping vision, inspiring courage, and guiding people toward higher purpose. To talk like a leader is to tell stories that people carry with them into their decisions, their work, and their lives. A persuasive story is not about fiction. It is about truth told in a way that moves the soul. And when the soul is moved, action follows. Chapter 7. Ask smart questions to guide conversations toward results. The quality of the questions a leader asks often determines the quality of the answers they receive. A poorly framed question can trap a conversation in circles, while a well-placed one can open doors to clarity, discovery, and action. Asking smart questions is not about interrogation. It is about guidance. It is about moving a dialogue forward with purpose so that energy and attention lead to tangible outcomes rather than wasted words. Leadership is not proven in how much one talks, but in how skillfully one draws out the wisdom, creativity, and commitment of others through questions that matter. When Socrates taught his students, he rarely handed them direct answers. Instead, he asked questions that forced them to think deeply, to confront assumptions, and to arrive at their own understanding. This method, known as the Socratic approach, endures today because it proves that the right question often does more than the most polished speech. It shifts the responsibility of thought to the listener, making them active participants instead of passive receivers. A leader who learns to ask smart questions can ignite problem solving, encourage ownership, and cut through the fog of confusion. The art of questioning begins with clarity of intention. Before asking, one must know the purpose. Am I seeking information, inspiring reflection, or guiding toward a decision? Questions without intention scatter attention, but questions with purpose direct it, like a laser. For instance, in a meeting filled with conflicting opinions, instead of saying, "What do you all think?" a leader might ask, "What solution best aligns with our long-term goal?" That small adjustment reframes the conversation from personal preference to collective mission. The result is not endless debate, but progress toward results. One practice that strengthens this skill is to replace yes or no questions with open-ended ones. Did this project succeed? Invites a narrow answer. What worked well in this project, and what could be improved? Opens a doorway for learning and constructive reflection. By asking in a way that draws out detail, a leader not only uncovers more information, but also shows that they value the thoughts of those they lead. People are more willing to invest energy when they feel their perspective is welcomed rather than dismissed. Real-world examples illustrate this vividly. A manager once noticed her team was struggling with low morale. Instead of asking, "Are you all okay?" which would have led to quick, surface-level replies, she asked, "What part of your work feels most draining right now, and how can I help ease it?" That one thoughtful question uncovered obstacles she had not seen. The conversation shifted from silence to honesty, and the solutions that emerged restored motivation. By asking smart questions, she turned frustration into problem-solving and built trust at the same time. The Stoics remind us that wisdom comes not from endless words, but from seeing reality as it is. Smart questions help reveal that reality. They cut through excuses and posturing. Consider a leader faced with a team member who continually misses deadlines. Instead of scolding, the leader might ask, "What barrier is preventing you from completing this on time?" This reframes the problem from personal failure to an obstacle that can be addressed. It communicates both accountability and support. The question seeks truth, and truth opens the path to resolution. One daily exercise is to prepare 3 questions before every important interaction, whether it is a team meeting, a negotiation, or even a family discussion. Write down 3 questions that will guide the conversation toward clarity. Keep them concise, purposeful, and open-ended. Over time, this habit trains the mind to lead with curiosity rather than assumption. It prevents wasted dialogue and directs energy toward what matters most. History gives us powerful examples of leaders who shaped movements with questions. During the American Revolution, Patrick Henry asked, "Is life so dear or peace so sweet as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery?" The question itself became more powerful than a statement, forcing his listeners to examine their own values and act accordingly. The strength of the question lay in its ability to stir conscience and drive decision. Leaders who frame their convictions as questions invite people to wrestle with truth rather than simply obey commands. In modern business, some of the best innovators are relentless question askers. Steve Jobs was famous for asking his teams, "Why does it have to be this way?" Or, "What would this look like if it were simple?" Those questions challenged assumptions, sparked creativity, and led to breakthroughs that changed entire industries. By refusing to accept surface answers, he pushed people to think deeper, and that pressure created extraordinary results. The secret to asking smart questions is also timing. A brilliant question, asked at the wrong moment, falls flat. A simple question asked at the right moment can change everything. In a heated argument, asking, "What outcome are we truly seeking here?" can dissolve ego-driven conflict and redirect focus. In a moment of discouragement, asking, "What lesson can we carry from this setback?" transforms failure into growth. Timing requires attentiveness, the ability to read the emotional current of a conversation and step in with a question that shifts its direction. Another powerful practice is to ask questions that connect people to responsibility. For example, instead of dictating tasks, a leader might say, "What part of this project do you feel most prepared to lead?" This not only clarifies roles, but also gives individuals ownership. When people declare their own commitment, they are far more likely to follow through than if responsibilities are imposed on them. Smart questions create leaders within the team by drawing out initiative. Trust also grows when leaders are willing to ask questions that show humility. Saying, "What am I missing here?" or "How do you see this differently?" signals that authority does not mean having all the answers. This humility strengthens relationships and encourages others to speak honestly. A leader who refuses to ask questions often isolates themselves, while a leader who welcomes questions creates collaboration. In daily life, even outside leadership roles, the practice of asking smart questions transforms interactions. A parent guiding a teenager through challenges might replace lectures with, "What do you think is the consequence of that choice?" That question engages the young person's reasoning instead of provoking resistance. The coach working with athletes might ask, "What adjustment will help you perform at your best?" That simple question hands responsibility to the athlete and builds confidence. The principle is the same everywhere. Smart questions create thoughtful answers, and thoughtful answers create better outcomes. The weight of words can either burden or build. When leaders ask poorly chosen questions, like "Why are you always failing?" they plant seeds of defensiveness. When they ask wisely, like "What support do you need to succeed?" they plant seeds of growth. Both are questions, but one shuts doors while the other opens them. A leader's discipline lies in choosing questions that invite progress rather than resentment. Conversations are journeys, and questions are the compass. They direct energy toward the destination rather than leaving people lost in endless wandering. When used with care, questions shorten the distance between confusion and clarity, between tension and resolution, between ideas and action. They do not just extract information, they shape the very direction of thought. A question asked with wisdom has the power to shift the trajectory of a conversation, a team, or even a life. It is a reminder that leadership is less about knowing everything and more about guiding others to discover answers that lead to results. By mastering the art of asking smart questions, a leader builds not only solutions, but also trust, responsibility, and growth. In a world filled with noise, those who know how to ask the right questions will always guide people toward what truly matters. Chapter 8. Handle tough conversations calmly with leadership presence. Every leader will face conversations that test their composure. It may be a performance review that could damage someone's confidence, a negotiation with high stakes, or addressing conflict within a team that has been simmering for months. These are the moments where words carry enormous weight. What separates a true leader from someone merely in authority is the ability to enter difficult dialogue without losing presence, to remain steady when emotions rise, and to guide the conversation toward resolution rather than escalation. Calmness is not weakness. It is a form of power that makes others feel safe, respected, and willing to engage. The Stoics often wrote about maintaining control of the inner self regardless of outer storms. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that he would meet people who were unreasonable, selfish, and aggressive. Yet he committed not to respond in kind, but to stay anchored in virtue. That mindset is essential when walking into a tough conversation. You cannot control the other person's tone, but you can control your own. You cannot predict their reaction, but you can prepare your presence. A leader must be the steady center when others spin in chaos. Tough conversations often fail because people enter them with the wrong aim. They go in to prove a point, to dominate, or to release frustration. But the true goal is understanding and movement. A calm leader asks, what outcome serves both the relationship and the mission? Holding that goal at the forefront keeps emotions from hijacking the dialogue. For example, if a manager confronts an underperforming employee with only anger, the employee may shut down defensively. But if the manager approaches calmly, saying, "I want to understand what's getting in the way of your performance so we can fix it together." The conversation shifts from blame to collaboration. The same problem is addressed, but with presence rather than hostility. A practical exercise is to rehearse the beginning of a tough conversation. The opening words often set the tone. Instead of diving straight into accusation, start with grounding language. "I'd like to talk about something important, and my goal is to find a way forward together." Practicing this calm entry trains the mind to default to composure rather than aggression. Over time, this becomes natural, and others begin to trust that even in conflict, the leader will remain steady. Real-life examples prove how presence shapes outcomes. Consider Abraham Lincoln during the Civil War. His cabinet often erupted in heated arguments, with strong personalities clashing over strategy. Lincoln rarely raised his voice. Instead, he listened, let the storm pass, and then spoke with measured calm. His composure diffused tension and allowed reason to re-enter the room. His ability to remain grounded in the midst of crisis gave his team confidence, even when disagreements were fierce. That presence was as vital to his leadership as his decisions on the battlefield. Another powerful practice is mastering silence. Many people fear pauses in difficult conversations, rushing to fill them with nervous words, but a calm leader allows silence to breathe. If someone lashes out, respond with quiet stillness rather than immediate defense. That pause sends a message: "I am not shaken, and I will respond thoughtfully." This patience often causes the other person to soften, realizing they are not in a fight, but in a dialogue. Silence becomes a tool of strength rather than awkwardness. One manager shared a story of handling an employee who angrily accused the company of unfair treatment. Instead of matching the emotion, she sat calmly, listened fully, and when the employee finished, she simply said, "I hear how strongly you feel, and I want to understand the details so we can address this properly." The temperature in the room dropped instantly. The employee leaned back, lowered his tone, and began explaining instead of attacking. Her presence transformed confrontation into cooperation without a single raised voice. Leadership presence is also reflected through body language. Calmness is not only in words, but in posture, facial expression, and tone. A leader who folds arms tightly, frowns, or leans aggressively forward may say calm words, but still communicate hostility. On the other hand, steady eye contact, open posture, and a relaxed but firm voice send signals of confidence and respect. People respond not only to what is said, but to how it is embodied. By mastering your own body language, you create an atmosphere where tough conversations feel safe rather than threatening. The Stoic discipline of preparing for difficulty applies here too. Before entering a challenging conversation, take time to regulate your own emotions. Breathe deeply, recall the larger purpose, and remind yourself that anger serves no useful outcome. This preparation is like sharpening a sword before battle. It ensures you are ready to engage with strength rather than being caught off guard. A prepared mind can remain calm even under provocation. Timing is also crucial. Not every tough conversation must happen immediately. Sometimes waiting until emotions settle allows for a more productive dialogue. A leader who rushes into confrontation in the heat of anger often causes more damage, but one who waits just long enough to regain presence enters with clarity. For example, addressing a mistake in front of the entire team may embarrass someone unnecessarily, but taking them aside privately shows respect and reduces defensiveness. Knowing when and where to have the conversation is as important as the words chosen. Trust grows when people know that even in difficulty they will be treated with dignity. This does not mean avoiding hard truths. On the contrary, calm leaders speak with honesty, but their delivery makes the truth digestible. Imagine being told, "You're failing and you might lose your job," versus "Your recent results concern me and I want to work with you on a plan to improve." Both deliver reality, but the second approach offers hope and partnership. The tough message is received without destroying the relationship. History also shows how calm presence can prevent disaster. During the Cuban Missile Crisis, John F. Kennedy faced advisors urging immediate military strikes. Instead of reacting with fear or aggression, he remained composed, listened, and asked deliberate questions. His calm leadership steered the situation toward diplomacy rather than war. His presence under immense pressure may have prevented nuclear catastrophe. This illustrates that the calmness of one leader can ripple outward to affect millions. A daily practice that reinforces this presence is journaling after tough conversations. Write down what went well, where emotions almost took over, and how you maintained calm. This reflection sharpens self-awareness and builds the ability to respond with discipline in future conflicts. Over time, you will notice growth in your composure and in how others respond to you. In the workplace, in families, in communities, tough conversations are unavoidable. They often carry the potential for division. But when handled calmly, they can become opportunities for growth, deeper trust, and lasting resolution. The leader who remains steady shows others that it is possible to face difficulty without fear, to address problems without hostility, and to guide with strength that does not shout but steadies. A calm presence in difficult dialogue communicates something deeper than authority. It communicates character. It shows that leadership is not about dominating others, but about guiding them through storms with steadiness. When people experience this kind of leadership, they feel secure enough to do honest, courageous enough to change, and committed enough to follow. Words may fade, but the memory of how a leader handled difficulty remains, and that memory shapes the culture of trust that defines true leadership. Chapter 9. Project confidence through tone, body language, and delivery. When people think about leadership, they often imagine bold decisions, brilliant strategies, or big visions. But there's a hidden ingredient that makes all of those things believable: confidence in the way you deliver yourself. The words you say matter, but the way you say them can completely change their impact. A sentence delivered with shaky tone and slouched posture will sound weak, even if the message is powerful. The same sentence, spoken with steady tone, upright posture, and deliberate delivery, can move people into action. Leaders are constantly communicating, not just through language, but through voice and body. And when those elements project confidence, others feel safe, inspired, and ready to follow. Confidence in delivery begins with tone. Your voice carries more than just sound. It carries energy. People can hear hesitation, even when you don't say it out loud. They can also feel conviction when it's present. Think about how differently I believe we can achieve this goal lands when said flatly, versus when spoken with warmth, emphasis, and rhythm. The second way makes the listener want to lean in and believe it too. Confidence is contagious when expressed vocally. That doesn't mean being the loudest person in the room. It means using modulation, varying volume, speed, and pitch to show that you're engaged and sure of your words. Body language reinforces what tone begins. Humans read nonverbal signals far faster than they process speech. If your shoulders sag, your eyes dart around, or your gestures are jittery, people will question your certainty. But if you stand with balance, maintain steady eye contact, and gesture naturally to support your points, your presence radiates assurance. It's like telling your audience, "You can trust me," without saying a word. Leaders who project this kind of composure become anchors in any setting. People gravitate toward them because they radiate stability in a world that often feels unstable. Delivery ties both tone and body language together. Delivery is the art of timing, pacing, and emphasis. A confident leader does not rush through ideas as if afraid of being interrupted. They pace their speech, pausing just enough to let thoughts sink in. They highlight key words by slowing slightly, lowering tone, or leaning in. This creates moments of impact. Delivery is like conducting an orchestra, controlling rhythm so the audience feels the weight of the message. Imagine a leader announcing a vision for the future. If they speed through it nervously, no one remembers it. But if they deliver it with deliberate pacing, letting each key phrase resonate, people will not only remember it, will echo in their minds long after. One practice you can try is recording yourself reading a paragraph aloud, then playing it back without watching the video, just listening to your tone. Do you sound engaged? Do you sound certain? Next, watch the video without audio, paying attention only to body language. Do your movements look calm and strong, or nervous and distracting? Finally, watch with both sound and visuals. This self-awareness exercise helps you see what others see and hear, and it allows you to adjust tone, body posture, and delivery until they align with the confidence you want to project. A real-life example comes from Oprah Winfrey. Her ability to hold a room comes not just from what she says, but from how she says it. Her voice has warmth, clarity, and power. She uses pauses masterfully, and her gestures feel intentional rather than random. People believe her not simply because of her reputation, but because her tone, body language, and delivery consistently communicate assurance. Audiences feel her confidence, and that emotional transfer creates trust. She exemplifies the idea that when delivery is strong, people listen, even if they don't fully agree at first. Another example is Steve Jobs unveiling the iPhone. The device was revolutionary, but what made that launch unforgettable was Jobs' delivery. His tone carried excitement and certainty, his body language was relaxed yet controlled, and his pacing allowed the audience to absorb each reveal. He didn't rush, he created space for anticipation, letting silence work for him. His confidence in presenting made the audience feel they were witnessing history. That is the power of projecting confidence through tone, body, and delivery. It turns moments into movements. Confidence projection isn't about pretending. In fact, fake confidence cracks easily. Authenticity strengthens presence. People can sense when a speaker is trying too hard to look confident versus when they are grounded in belief. That's why preparation matters. The more you prepare your message, the more naturally confidence comes out in delivery. Leaders who know their subject deeply don't need to bluff. They can focus on how to share it with conviction. Practice builds comfort, and comfort breeds confident tone and body language. One of the most overlooked techniques is breathing. Leaders who breathe shallowly tend to speak too quickly, with voices that strain, but leaders who use diaphragmatic breathing, deep, steady breaths, project calmer, stronger voices. Breathing not only fuels voice, but regulates nerves. When your breath is steady, your mind slows down, your body relaxes, and your delivery feels grounded. This is why professional speakers and actors practice breathing exercises before performances. It's a small habit with massive impact. Think about how children watch adults for cues. If a parent speaks calmly and confidently during a storm, the child feels safe. If the parent panics, the child absorbs that fear instantly. Audiences, teams, and communities aren't much different. They take emotional cues from leaders. Confidence in tone, body language, and delivery transmits reassurance in uncertain times. That's why presence is not only about personal style, it's about service. A confident leader gives others the courage to keep going. Practicing small daily habits makes a big difference. When you talk to a colleague, experiment with pausing slightly before answering instead of rushing. When you present an idea, stand tall and ground your feet before speaking. When you explain something, let your tone rise on passion points and fall on serious notes. These micro-adjustments accumulate into a delivery style that feels magnetic. Over time, you'll notice people listening more closely, nodding more often, and recalling your words later. That's the invisible reward of projecting confidence. They carry your message with them. Confidence in communication also protects your credibility. Imagine a leader presenting data but delivering it in a hesitant, scattered way. Even if the data is flawless, the delivery makes people doubt. On the other hand, a leader presenting the same numbers with clarity and strong tone inspires trust. People don't just judge the content, they judge the messenger. By aligning tone, body language, and delivery with confidence, you remove doubts that might cloud your message. History offers countless reminders of this truth. Winston Churchill rallied a weary nation during World War II, not with flashy gestures, but with deliberate delivery. His voice carried unshakable certainty. His body language was firm but not exaggerated. His speeches, paced and weighted with conviction, inspired resilience in millions. Without that confident delivery, the same words might not have carried the same force. Confidence transforms communication from information into inspiration. Leaders are always performing in some way, not in the sense of acting, but in the sense that people are watching, reading cues, and deciding whether to follow. Every meeting, every speech, every conversation is an opportunity to project confidence or sow doubt. Mastering tone, body language, and delivery ensures that when the spotlight is on, you embody assurance. People rarely remember every word, but they always remember how a leader made them feel, and confidence makes them feel secure, motivated, and willing to trust. The most important takeaway is this: confidence is not arrogance. True confidence isn't about dominating or overpowering others. It's about showing up with enough strength that others feel supported. Arrogance pushes people away. Confidence draws them in. By refining tone, shaping body language, and practicing delivery, leaders strike that balance. They communicate belief in themselves and belief in those they lead. And that combination inspires loyalty that no title or authority alone can create. Confidence is a skill, not just a personality trait. With practice, awareness, and intention, anyone can grow in the way they project it. Every interaction becomes a rehearsal for leadership presence. And over time, tone, body language, and delivery become not tools you force, but natural expressions of who you are as a leader. That's when communication stops being mechanical and starts being magnetic. And when your presence becomes magnetic, people don't just listen, they follow. Chapter 10. End every conversation with clarity, vision, and direction. Every conversation is like a journey. It starts with curiosity, travels through ideas, and ends at a destination. The trouble is, most people never make it to that destination. They leave discussions half-finished, unclear, or drifting without direction. Leaders don't have that luxury. They know that how a conversation ends matters as much as how it begins, because the conclusion leaves the lasting impression. People rarely remember every detail, but they remember what they walk away with, whether it's clarity or confusion, confidence or doubt, inspiration or indifference. That is why leaders end every conversation with clarity, vision, and direction. Clarity is the first cornerstone. When people leave an exchange not knowing what was decided, what to do next, or what the point even was, trust erodes. They question competence and lose energy. On the other hand, clarity feels like a breath of fresh air. It cuts through the fog and gives people solid ground. Think about how reassuring it feels when someone says, "Here's what we've agreed on, and here's the next step." It doesn't have to be complicated. Simplicity is the heart of clarity. Leaders who strip away extra words and summarize with precision make everyone else's job easier. Vision adds the fuel. Without vision, clarity can feel mechanical. You know what to do, but you don't know why it matters. A leader who paints a picture of what the future can look like transforms clarity into motivation. When Martin Luther King Jr. ended his speeches, he didn't just give clarity about civil rights. He gave a vision of a world people longed to see. Vision is that glimpse of the destination that makes the hard work worthwhile. It doesn't have to be grand every time. It can be as simple as showing how today's decision ties into tomorrow's progress. But without vision, people drift. With vision, they commit. Direction is the action point. It answers the question, what now? Even the clearest vision fails if people don't know what step to take. Direction is the bridge between inspiration and execution. Leaders give direction by identifying concrete actions and assigning responsibility, not vague promises, but specific next steps. A team that leaves knowing exactly what to do walks away empowered. Without direction, even the most passionate conversation evaporates into nothing. Direction turns words into movement. Consider a real-world example. Imagine a manager wrapping up a meeting about a new project. A week ending sounds like, "Okay, so we'll figure this out and talk again soon." Everyone leaves guessing. Compare that with, "To recap, Sarah will draft the proposal by Friday. James will gather the data and we'll meet next Tuesday to finalize." This project moves us closer to streamlining operations, which means fewer delays for our customers. The second ending gives clarity, vision and direction in under a minute. It reassures the team, motivates them, and puts everyone on the same page. That small shift in how you close transforms the energy of the room. One practice you can start using immediately is the three-step close. Before you end any conversation, whether a meeting, a phone call, or a casual hallway exchange, ask yourself, have I clarified the main point, shared the bigger picture, and outlined the next step? If any of those are missing, the conversation isn't done. For example, if you're coaching a colleague, you might end with, "The key takeaway is focusing on clear email communication." Doing this will make your leadership presence stronger. For the next week, try drafting emails with a single main point and bring examples to our next check-in. That's clarity, vision, and direction in a single close. Great leaders also understand that the ending isn't just informational, it's emotional. The last moments of any interaction leave an imprint. If you close with hesitation or vagueness, that uncertainty lingers. If you close with confidence, conviction, and warmth, that energy carries forward. Neuroscience even supports this. People remember the peaks and the endings of experiences more than the middles. This peak-end rule means that your closing words shape how the entire conversation is remembered. That's why finishing strong is non-negotiable for leaders. History provides striking examples of leaders who mastered the art of the ending. Think about Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. It was short, clear, and it ended with a vision that government of the people, by the people, for the people shall not perish from the earth. That closing line still echoes through time, not just because of what it promised, but because it gave a clear sense of direction about preserving democracy. Endings that combine clarity, vision, and direction transcend the moment. They become legacies. In daily life, the same principle applies on smaller scales. A teacher who ends a class by saying, "Your assignment is due Friday, and here's why it connects to what we're building toward this semester," not only provides direction but ties learning to a bigger vision. A coach who ends practice with, "Our focus this week is discipline, because discipline wins games, and here's how we'll practice it tomorrow," does the same. The scale doesn't matter. The principle remains. The best leaders never leave people guessing. Clarity, vision, and direction are also a form of respect. When you take the time to summarize, inspire, and guide, you show that you value the time and energy others have invested. You give them the gift of certainty in a world that is often messy. That respect builds trust, and trust compounds into loyalty. People will follow leaders who consistently make their path forward visible. This skill also guards against wasted energy. Consider how many hours are lost in workplaces because people leave meetings unsure of priorities. Teams chase different interpretations, work on unnecessary tasks, or stall completely. Ending with clarity and direction prevents that drain. It saves resources, preserves focus, and accelerates results. A strong ending is not just good communication, it is good leadership economics. One powerful way to strengthen this habit is to script your endings in advance. Before a conversation begins, ask yourself, what do I want people to walk away with? Write it down in 1 or 2 sentences. Use that as your closing. Over time, this practice trains your brain to naturally end with precision and inspiration. It doesn't mean sounding rehearsed, it means being intentional. Leaders who prepare their endings rarely stumble into vagueness. Another layer is tailoring the ending to the audience. With a team of professionals, you might emphasize execution steps. With a group of volunteers, you might highlight purpose and impact. With an executive board, you might close with a strategic vision. The structure stays the same, but the emphasis shifts. That flexibility makes your leadership feel both consistent and personal, strengthening your influence across different contexts. The key is balance. Endings should not drag on with endless detail, nor should they be so short that they leave people lost. They should be concise, but not cold. They should energize, not drain. They should feel final, but also open a path forward. Striking that balance takes practice, but once mastered, it becomes second nature. Ending conversations with clarity, vision, and direction is more than a communication technique, it is a discipline. It requires presence of mind, awareness of purpose, and commitment to others' success. The Stoics taught that every action should align with principle and purpose. In the same way, every ending should align with leadership. When you close with clarity, you honor truth. When you close with vision, you inspire hope. When you close with direction, you empower action. Those 3 together embody what leadership is at its core. Imagine the difference this habit could make in your own life. Picture ending every conversation with a friend, a colleague, or a team member in a way that leaves them not just informed, but uplifted and ready to act. That consistency builds reputation. People begin to expect that when they talk to you, they'll leave sharper, more motivated, and more focused. Over time, that expectation becomes your leadership brand. The most effective leaders understand that conversations are not random. They are opportunities to shape outcomes, and the way you end them is the lever that turns talk into progress. The world is filled with unfinished conversations, unclear directions, and forgotten visions. But leaders who discipline themselves to always close with clarity, vision, and direction stand apart. They leave no confusion, only confidence, no drifting, only purpose, no hesitation, only momentum. When every conversation ends with that kind of strength, leadership stops being something you perform occasionally and becomes something you embody consistently. And when people know that your words always bring clarity, vision, and direction, they don't just listen while you speak. They carry your influence long after the conversation ends.